Welcome to the Restored Living Podcast. We're your hosts, Josh and Jalen Harrell.
We are a husband and wife who are passionate about partnering with people to rebuild, restore, and renew their lives to the purpose God has for them.
In 2018, God took our broken marriage and restored it to something beautiful, and we believe He wants to restore the parts of your life that seem broken too.
Join with us as we talk openly about what it looks like to walk out restoration in Jesus and what it means to let the cracks in our story become the greatest evidence of God's love for us.
This is Restored Living.
Are you gonna let him in?
No, he's fine.
He's gonna whine.
He'll be okay.
He's not gonna be okay.
If I have to step up and go let him in, we're talking about the dog. He whines and moans
Not
and
the
groans.
baby. Just to be
No,
clear,
he's asleep. Now
Always.
just leave him out there. He's fine.
he's fine.
It's not the baby.
He's good. Well, welcome to the Restored Living Podcast. I'm Jalen.
I'm Josh.
In case you didn't know us,
Now you do.
Now
Not
you
really.
do.
You know our names. That's about all you know. But
here we are.
oh, hello.
Hello,
What holiday?
it's me.
I've been wondering.
Listen, you got to stay in the middle of the frame.
I can't.
Sorry.
We were just talking about this. How we want like eventually a couch to sit on because this is just so cramped. But
If you donate to the Restored Living Podcast,
we could buy a couch to record the podcast. I'm just kidding. We wouldn't spend the
we
money
could
on a couch.
actually buy cameras to be able to
Yeah.
record this, not on our laptop.
Not on our MacBook.
That would be nice.
One day.
One day.
One day more.
Here we go. All right.
We're going to actually sing this whole thing. This is going to be a musical podcast. No, that would be terrible.
Actually,
Even
I'm
I
really
wouldn't listen to
excited
that.
for our episode today. I think it's going to be good.
Mhm.
The Lord has something in store.
Lord has
But
something good.
first, housekeeping.
I want a shirt that says housekeeping. And it
Like
has what's
it's
his face on it.
HAUS
Uh-huh.
keeping.
Uh-huh.
Should we do a comment below this or wherever you can comment on this, like on our Instagram or whatever? Should
Or on
we do?
YouTube.
Should we
Housekeeping
do
shirt.
merch?
That would be so funny. One day we will.
RL merch.
One day. Our own merch.
It
But
would have all of your greetings, like "Hola,
Bienvenido.
bienvenido,
Bienvenido.
bienvenido,
Bienvenido. Oh, that's super neato. All right.
Nito Speedo."
Housekeeping thing. No Speedos here. We don't do Speedos.
Why not?
Because for so many reasons. Oh my goodness.
It would
We're
be
getting off on a tangent.
fine.
All right. So
You
was very
said that.
synchronized. Housekeeping items. First and foremost, if this is your first time, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just kidding. This is how every episode
We
starts.
have a lot of fun on the
If
pod.
this is your first time, thank you for being here. This podcast, as you go back and maybe look at previous episodes, you will see we talk about a variety of different topics, but all of them, as we always say, are rooted in one concept, which is this concept of restoration and how the Lord desires to restore all the broken parts of our lives. Because the reality is this life throws many things at us and the world throws many things at us. And the Lord desires to restore and redeem all of that. So that is the common thread, but you'll see that what we talk about varies depending on what we're seeing in the world, what we're experiencing, what the Lord's walking through with us, as well as others that we're sitting with. And so we're just grateful that you would choose to be here and spend an hour-ish of your time listening in on this conversation. And that leads into my second piece, which is that we always want you to be a part of the conversation. So obviously this is a one-way screen. We can't see you, although we wish we could. But what we can do is have the door open for you to engage with us. And so we do that in a variety of ways. You can find us on Instagram at Restored Living. You can DM us there or comment on things
IG.
there on the IG. And then we do have a YouTube channel as well, so you can comment there. And then the last thing is if you ever have things that you want to send us that maybe are too long for a DM or something, you can always email us at restoredlivingministries, all one word, at gmail.com. And that's where we receive. There's also a contact us link on the website, which is just restoredliving.org/contact.
Yes.
Okay. I asked her because she made the website. So if you like it, it's because she did it. So those are just some of the general things.
We also our our Restored Living Give Us Back year-end fundraising initiative that is forever long in title. We are extending that
The
through
RLGB.
December 31st.
Yep, December 31st. So right
We're
to the end of
making
the
it
year.
really year-end. There's multiple reasons to that I don't want to get into because I want the content of this pod to be what it is. But we just know there's some of you that still have yet to give and want to be a part of that specific giving initiative. And so we're just extending it through the holidays.
You'll find the link in the show notes for you to be able to go straight to our giving page. You can give one-time gifts, monthly donations. It's all tax deductible because of our nonprofit status. So that's just something helpful for some of you to know. And as always, if you are wanting to maybe make a larger donation, please reach out and let us know. We would love to meet with you and actually have a conversation to be able to share what it is that we intend to do with those funds. Transparency is very important to us. So the money that comes in, we want you guys to know exactly where it's going to and who it's going to. We actually just met with another couple this morning who are needing some just guidance and support and resources. And they were really grateful to hear about how little we charge because of the cost being subsidized by the donations that come in. So
your donation matters.
They do. It matters. It's helping couples and individuals, and we're really grateful for that. So thank you if you have already partnered with us in that way. I think that's all I'm going to share for today for housekeeping because I know we're on a tighter time schedule and we want to get into the content of today's podcast, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to kick us off? Or do you
Go for it.
Go for it. So
the topic for today is.
Oh, actually, I'm going to give a disclaimer first because some of our podcast episodes are very family friendly. So if you're listening to this with children right now who you have not had certain conversations with, certain the talk in particular, or don't want to listen to content that might be a little bit more mature, maybe just pause this episode and listen to it without them around, or pop your AirPods in
headphones,
and
maybe.
listen there. So I'm going to give a pause for a sec. And we're going to dive in.
3, 2, 1.
So today we're talking about pornography. And more specifically, this conversation was sparked because I came home the other night from work and you showed me a YouTube
there is
episode.
A news story going around that piqued my interest
in
Josh's.
Yeah, in a very disheartening and shocking way. So there's, as many of you are aware, I would say probably in the last 2 years, the pornography industry has exploded, which is crazy
more
to say
than
because
it was,
already
which is crazy.
But as with the introduction of OnlyFans specifically, it has exploded into a such a larger thing than we have ever witnessed before. And the news, it wasn't an article, it was a video that Jay showed me, was about this young woman, probably in her, I would guess in her 20s, maybe early 30s, but probably
she's
her 20s.
In her 20s.
Yeah,
for sure.
Who completed what she would call a challenge of sleeping with 100 men in one day.
Just wrap your brain around that right now, those of you who are married.
Or not, just anyone. And she's now going after another challenge of sleeping with 1,000 men in one day to break the world record for most men slept with in a day.
24 hours.
So it's obviously that we watched this video and it was just shocking to watch. But immediately we were both just like, this has to be talked about. Not, first of all, clearly, just make this plain. Not because we're actually not going to really talk about her. This was just an example that brought the larger issue to light. But so there is no intent to shame anyone here. But to bring this issue to light because it is inside the church, outside the church, globally, it is one of the most rampant things. And it has only gotten worse in the last few years at an increment or an exponential scale. I didn't look up statistics before this. I really wanted to, but I don't even know if it's necessary.
Maybe we'll do a part 2 that has more statistics, but y'all can go Google or on Apple Podcasts, you can search the word pornography, and I'm sure you'll hear from many, many experts on pornography statistics and all of these things. We will speak in more generalized statistics that we've heard. So don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah, they're going to be rough statistics, but they are things that we have heard from reputable sources.
And as you guys know, pornography is a part of our story as well. Josh had a pornography addiction for several years. And so it's close to our heart. There's a couple things I think you will be surprised we talk about. So stay tuned for that in this episode, because I do think pornography is a two-way street, and we don't talk about the other half of the street very much. We talk about the men watching pornography, but and women, yes, men and women watch pornography, not just men, but we don't talk about the other half of people who are making pornography and why they're making it and the damage that has been done to them that is causing them to be in this industry, or the forcible being in this industry. There's so many things to that. And so that's just something I feel like we don't talk about very often.
Yeah.
And I think it's important.
Yeah, I agree. So
I want to hear, I showed you, I can share my reaction after you share yours, but so tell me, when I showed you that news story, what were your kind of initial thoughts?
I think it was a lot of disbelief, a lot of just like pure shock, that this would even be something that's like, it's not even like it's trying to be hidden or concealed. It's very just like public and seemingly acceptable by many, many people.
I had to go Google this, like, because OnlyFans feels like it should be illegal.
Right. And because it's not technically marketed as a pornography producing website, it's an exclusive content website. But I mean, you name someone who's successful on OnlyFans, it's not making pornography. They don't exist. There's not anyone that's doing anything but that and making money on it. I just was in complete shock that would be, that would be something that's just publicly being shared so openly.
Have I told you that in our town, I have seen...
No, I know. I see them all the time. We see people drive... I mean, all the time makes it sound like every day. There have been multiple times where both of us have seen like OnlyFans stickers on trucks and stuff with like their people's handles and stuff for their OnlyFans. So it's not publicly, it's not a shameful thing. So I guess is what I'm seeing. But what I was so shocked about wasn't necessarily that it's happening, because I think that's been going on for a long time, obviously. I think I was more shocked at the kind of idolization of it, that it is like this really amazing way for women to, because it is largely women. I'm sure men are doing it too. But for women to be able to, make a lot of money, to be able to, most of the women that I've seen in interviews talking about it, who, and most of these women are making 6 figures upwards a month on this platform.
Yeah, they're making a lot of money.
They talk about it like it's this really empowering experience, and how they just feel like a lot of sense of like power and authority and control and things like that. Mm-hmm. But what was really discouraging was, one, just seeing this poor girl talk about this experience who did it. And she was just...
so in this news story, they played a video clip of after she did the 100 men in a day challenge.
There's a guy there filming all of this, which is disgusting
like
to me.
A YouTube video. Like you guys.
It was like it was a YouTube video, but it was an OnlyFans video.
I was shocked because of that. Like, my kids watch YouTube all the time.
And this wasn't, to be clear, it wasn't posted on YouTube.
No,
but the way that it was made was similar to one of those, like, I ate 10,000 calories in a day kind of videos, but it was like I slept with 100 men in a day. And
it's like we've just taken, and we'll get into this later, but we've taken something so sacred and made it so nonchalantly nothing.
Yeah.
But it's still just as damaging.
Yeah.
If not more so damaging.
And you could see it in her. She was just like a shell of a human. I mean, she was so flat, and it was like she was totally removed. She even talked about dissociating during it. She's like, I can only remember like 10 of the guys. And some of the guys were really disappointed because I didn't talk to them enough or whatever. It's just like a total fragmentation, like a total fragmentation of her soul and psyche. Like psychologically, she was like not there. And then you saw her kind of like start to break emotionally. And
I mean, she said it was awful.
Right.
In the video.
Right. And now she's like 10 times multiplying that because of the money that she makes. And this was really sick, is her mom is her financial manager for her business, whatever, which is so disgusting to me. I can't even fathom as a parent how you could justify doing that. I don't even like know how evil you would have to be to do that. And I don't care. I mean, this is my reaction as just a dad. Like, I don't care what happened to that mom. I mean, I do care, but nothing that happened to you, unless you are to your core, you have just you have just left behind all human decency. I don't see how you could do that. I don't see, even in your worst trauma, how you could do that to your daughter. It just is like mind boggling to me. But
I think you just see it in a different light, right?
That's a whole other thing. Well, yeah.
Hurt people. So yeah. I don't think.
But I do think that there is, to an extent, there is a sense of where it's like, I think all of us as parents make mistakes. We do wrong because of the wrongs done to us. And then there's like another level of it where you have just completely abandoned your role as a parent. And I don't think you could do something like be a financial advisor or manager for your daughter's selling herself to the world and justify that in any way. I mean, it's just so, yeah, I just, as a parent, I can't fathom that. There's no mention of her dad, which we could get into that too. But anyways, like we said, this all really just opened up a bigger can of issues and made us realize we just hadn't talked on this topic of pornography in a long time.
Yeah.
And just how damaging it is.
We talk about pornography often because we work with many couples.
Right. We do talk behind the podcast
addictions.
And we've had to have conversations with our boys, even just about like, what is it? I mean, they're 10 and 8, and that might sound young to you, but the average age of exposure is between 7 and 10 now for
probably, men. Oh, I'm sure it's
boys.
Lower than that these days.
I don't know.
That was like back 5 years ago.
No, recently I was looking into it, and it was similar.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it hasn't changed drastically, but still 7 to 10, like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
Prepubescent.
Landon was 5.
And he didn't, let's be clear too about what he did see, because it wasn't like.
It was the startings of pornography, which we've talked about on the show. So
it's what we call like soft pornography, where it's you know, it's the way that they show an almost naked woman in a video game, or it's the way that they, you know, show something in an ad that is implying something, right? It's the seeds planted.
I mean,
pornography.
And that was when we were letting Landon have kind of access to an iPad. We were still watching over things, but he was playing with this iPad, and there was an ad that played that was it was supposed to be like a squishy toy, like you touch the squishy toy and it jiggles, you know. Well, of course you can tell where maybe this will go. It was a peach, but it wasn't really a peach. It was skin tone peach
with like a
bikini tan line, like a naked butt.
Yeah.
And you were watching it jiggle. And you guys, those are that's soft porn. Like
it's the groundwork.
It's the groundwork, right? Yeah. Like, this is enticing. This is funny. Oh, it jiggles. You know, like to the male and female brains, like it's enticing.
Yeah.
Our bodies were meant to be enjoyed and consumed in the covenant of a committed relationship. And we are attracted to those things because God created goodness in us,
right?
To enjoy that with someone else, to enjoy our bodies, to enjoy all of those things. And porn distorts that.
Yeah. And it is a way of, it's one of the greatest ways that the enemy capitalizes on one of God's greatest gifts to us in marriage, right? So like, and even outside of marriage, like it's this, we often talk about this, and we even said it today, this couple we were talking to, but pornography and masturbation and sex addiction.
Just watch your hands, because you're moving your hands on the table.
Pornography and sex addiction, all those things in any form are not the primary issue. They are a secondary issue. They're a secondary result. But the reality is that, like, as human beings, we were created to have enjoyment, and arousal is a part of that. And the enemy has hijacked that in a very significant way through sex culture, which is what we're seeing right now in our world. Is nothing new, but it is at a different caliber, right? Like it's the same as, I mean, you look back in scripture, and like the Roman culture that the early church was growing in was like obsessed with all things carnal. It was sex, it was gluttony, it was, you can do whatever you want with whoever you want. I mean, that's no different than our world now. But the scale of it now is exponentially higher. So same things happening on a much greater scale. And it's because the enemy knows how fragmenting it is to the human soul. Even scripture says that, like, there's no sin that's greater than another sin, but in terms of what damage it does to the person sinning, sexual sin is the worst. Like, it does something to you on a soul level that other sin does not do to you. And so it's a great way for the enemy to capture someone, right? Or to bind someone up, even somebody who's a believer, to bind somebody up and keep them trapped. And most people who are in the midst of a porn addiction, you will ask, who want to stop, you will hear from them that it just feels like this cycle that no matter how hard I try not to, I keep running back. And that's a very, very common story that we hear from men, women, anyone who's dealing with this. And it's because there is such a deep entanglement that happens in our hearts when we're engaging with it.
Yeah.
So that sounds kind of bleak and hopeless, but I think that we've obviously found that it's not all hopeless, but it does require you to kind of you have to stop treating the symptom of it, and you have to start understanding what it is that you're looking for. Because what we'll always say is we all have very legitimate needs and desires that are God-given that we go after in illegitimate ways because of the things that we've experienced, or because of our own wounds and the ways that we've been harmed. We will seek to get our needs met in ways that are actually harmful to us and sometimes harmful to others. And the sad part about pornography consumption is that you are a victim and you are victimizing at the same time, because as a consumer, you are harming yourself, but you are also victimizing and perpetuating this industry that the person on the other, or people on the other end of that screen are a part of. So you mentioned that we don't often talk about those two sides of the street and how there's not just one party involved in it. And you're right. I don't think we talk about the fact that there's the entire side of the industry of people who are making it.
Yep, there sure is.
So what do you want to say about that?
Well, what really struck me when I watched the video, because I have been sexually abused in my past. So, and part of that sexual abuse came from a boyfriend, but it was a culmination of me thinking that I needed to give parts of myself away so that I could belong and be loved. And it really, when I was just looking at her, watching her process kind of, how do I feel about this? Because that was the question that was asked of her, was, how do you feel now that you've done this thing? And she just said it's different. Like, it's different. And she didn't really have the words for it. But one of the things I remember her saying was, it takes a special kind of person to do this type of thing. And it wasn't, it's not for the weak, is what she said. And she's right. Like, sexual sin is not for the weak. And it is also going to harm the strong that are able to endure it. And the reason I say that is because we get into sexual sin or giving away of our bodies per se in exchange for love. And we do that out of our woundings. We do that out of the things that have been marred in us. And so our mind and our heart are seeing different things that we need and thinking, this is the way to get it, this way of giving myself away. And it's not exactly seen as bad, because we get some good things out of it. We get adoration from men, women, all sorts of things. And there's so much I want to say on this, but I think what strikes me the most about this culture is how okay we are with it and how damaging it can be. Because I always knew something wasn't right, but it's very covert when you have sexual abuse in your past. It's very covert where the behavior that's coming up is coming from, right? It's easy to blame it on all of these other things, but the misuse of our sexuality is so ingrained in who we are. Like, we were made in God's image, and that carries a lot of weight, right? Like, whoever you talk to, you're a human being with a soul and a heart and a mind, and so much that goes into that. Like, the way that God created us to be able to fit together perfectly with the opposite sex. Like, that's just crazy, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many amazing things that happen during sex that I think, how could we just think that happened? Like, it was intentionally created.
Yeah.
And then sin marred the ways that things were intentionally created. And so this poor girl, I'm praying for her. I hope she doesn't do this thing.
Yeah.
And they even told a story of this girl who has the world record now. It's like 919 people in a day or something stupid and crazy. And she was in the porn industry, and she said she regretted it. It was the worst thing she's ever done.
Yeah.
And yet still, the money is so great. And I wonder if this girl is thinking, well, maybe if I achieve one more thing.
Yeah.
Maybe if I do this one more thing, I'll feel powerful enough to fill that void that's in my heart. Maybe if I achieve this one more thing, I will feel this hole that's in me full.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that can fill that hole except for Jesus.
Yeah.
And the Lord. And I think on the opposite end of the porn spectrum, people who are consuming porn are trying to get porn to fill that hole in their heart.
Yeah.
And so it's a cycle that feeds off of each other, right?
Yeah.
It's a soul hole that when Josh and I have sex, that not even we can fill for each other.
Yeah.
It's a hole that the Lord has to fill with joy at our union, coming together body to body and enjoying each other in our nakedness. It's the shalom that God created.
Yeah.
And anything outside of that, like, triune connection, is not sufficient.
Yeah.
And it mars us. There was even times where, before I feel like we really had God in the very middle of our marriage, that like something would feel off about our sex life.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it can be true even if you're not looking at porn. We just all have, porn can come in so many different ways. And I want to be very clear, like, OnlyFans is not the way that you see porn. I think for many women, in particular millennials who grew up in the era of rom-coms are a version of pornography. I call it emotional pornography personally, because it's emotional pornography. It's not real. It's not real.
Yeah.
Like, these things that you're watching, they are created for you to consume with your eyeballs. They're not the real thing, man.
Yeah, and the problem is that human beings were not made for other human beings' consumption.
Right.
Like, we're not a product, right? However, when we engage in pornography, whether it's somebody producing it or taking it in, there's a sense of like, it's like a good exchange, like where I'm exchanging goods. You're giving me money, I'm giving you access to my body, right? And vice versa. And we have dehumanized people so much that they're not even image bearers anymore to us. Like, I don't think we really grasp that
instead.
Yeah. We don't grasp that concept that every single human being is made in the image of God. Every single one. Not everyone's a child of God, right? That's a choice. That's a choice to accept salvation. Everyone is created in the image of God. Every human being is some facet of his face. And when our own bodies are marred through the process of, and our own souls are marred through the process of engaging in pornography, viewing it, whatever it might be, or making it, that image gets more and more distorted to the point where we don't even see a human being anymore. We see a product. We see ourselves as a product to just be dished out or to be consumed. And that's why scripture says it's so damaging, because there's no other sin that removes your humanity quite like sexual sin. There's no other sin that mars your image as an image bearer quite like sexual sin does. Because there's a bonding that happens on a soul level when you are with someone like that. And God can heal and redeem all of that. If we choose to turn away from it and to bring that to him and to bring our broken pieces to him. And if we don't, we will live out that brokenness. We will live out from a place of, we will become more and more of a shell. And you ask a lot of people who have either been in the pornography industry, people who have who have either been sexually abused repeatedly, or who have just lived a life where they kind of allowed whatever they felt like. You will hear them talk about, like, it is a journey to heal from that. It is years and years of God working on tending, because there's so many little places in their heart that have been injured by this. And so it's just not, I think we talk about it in the church like it's a behavior to be addressed. A lot of times when it's brought up in the church, it's like, again, most of the time addressing men, getting better about addressing the fact that women are wrestling with this too.
Yeah. Can we just be real honest? Like, if you think people in your church are not struggling with sin because they're saved, you're wrong. You're severely misinformed. We all struggle with sin.
Right.
All of us. And whether we're in the church or not, we struggle with it. And I would beg to see the statistics of how many Christian men and women struggle with pornography.
Yeah, I mean, it's that.
Or sexual sin in its entirety, because I can guarantee you it's north of 60%. Guarantee you. Like, I would show me where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Because I bet it's true. And if it's not, there's a lot of people lying out there, because sex is such a part of who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have, unfortunately, there's a lot of work that we're doing to undo what we have done historically as a church when it comes to the area of sex and sexuality, because we have treated it like this really dark, taboo subject that we're just not going to touch. We're never going to, at best, we'll have a one weekend sermon on it during the year, and it's kind of awkward, and people kind of check out, or they don't show up because they don't want to talk about it. We've made it this really, really kind of other thing that is not talked about. And when it is talked about, it's often talked about in the realm of behavior modification. And well, this was what it's just kind of this is what the Bible says.
The Bible
this
says,
is what we need
don't
to do, and
sin
this is what you're supposed to do.
sexually. Don't look on another woman. Like, don't look on another man.
It's just like this repeated sermon over and over again. It's like, okay, well, if that sermon was effective, we'd have a lot less people watching pornography or engaging in sexual sin. But the reality is, when you focus on the behavior does not change. If you look at and like, this is not just in the church thing, this is globally. You in the world of psychology, you look at neuroscience, like, focusing on changing your behavior does nothing for the behavior, because none of our behaviors are the beginning and end point. The behaviors are like a fruit that comes from way, way, way down deep. They are the effects of something way upstream.
Yep.
And so we have to come alongside people and start to move backwards piece by piece to get to the point where we actually arrive at what is causing that behavior, what is driving the behavior.
The root that produces the fruit, my friends.
Exactly. And behind the actions, there is a thought process. Behind the thought process, there is an emotion. Behind the emotion, there's a need. And somewhere along the line, that need was either ignored, abused, neglected. And so we all find ways to meet our needs that are misaligned with God's design. In every facet of our lives, we do this. And the sex is no different. There's a need for something, whether that's control, whether it's safety, whether it is belonging, whether it is a sense of value or worth, whatever it might be. We cling to these behaviors as our way of getting those things, because either it's what we learned, or because it's all we felt we had, or something, right? And then we shame people for the behavior, when in reality, most people are just doing what they know to do. Like, their brain and their body don't know anything different. And so people live in this perpetual cycle of shame, thinking, I'm such a horrible person. Why do I do this? I must just be terrible. Like, I have no self-control. God must hate me. I'm a terrible spouse, blah, blah, blah. And the reality is none of those things are true. Yeah, you've made some bad decisions for sure. Like you've made some poor choices and you have hurt people. And it is not because you are a terrible person or you're just evil or you're, and I'm saying like most of the time, that is not the case. Majority of the time you are hurt. You are hurt in some way. You are hurting and you may not even know why. And you're trying to get your needs met and your brain is just trying to give you some sense of safety and control. And the reality is, and the lie of the enemy is that it can come through these, these things.
Yeah.
These things will provide you what you need. And they never do. And we all know that because the moment that we're done, what happens? We're self-loathing. We're shaming ourselves. We're talking about how terrible we are. We're, coming to God. I promise I won't do it again. I promise I won't do it again. And all along, he's like, yes, I'm so glad you're coming to me, but like, not the issue. God was not, it's not like God like turned a blind eye with last time you watched porn. And then he's like, oh, you watched it again? Oh my gosh, I didn't know. It's like, no, he was actually right next to you when you did, which might feel uncomfortable, but he was right next to you. And he was weeping beside you as you engaged with it. Cause he's just like, oh, I just wish you knew that this is so not what I have for you and that there is something so much better and that your needs matter and your desires matter and you're not wrong for wanting these things and you're not wrong for having needs to be met, but this isn't the way to do it. This isn't going to bring you joy. This isn't going to bring you fulfillment. This makes the hole in your heart bigger. Yeah. It just expands the chasm further and further, which is so like the enemy to do that. And so
I think so many times too, we see the person with the pornography addiction as a problem. Like that's a problem. The porn is the problem in our marriage and we need to fix it. Yeah. And I used to be that way too. So I totally get where you're coming from if that's how you feel, and you're allowed to feel how you want. Can I offer another thought? That the problem is the enemy. He is getting into your life, into your husband's life, into your life in multiple ways, right? Pornography is the vehicle, and that vehicle gives you a lot of information, right? And so what I seen in our life and in our story, was pornography involved? Yes. Were there struggles where Josh would cycle in addiction cycles of not watching porn and then watching porn and then not watching porn and then watching porn and me discovering it, and all of those things definitely happened. But you've been sober now for, I don't even remember how long. It's been a long time. And the reason I bring that up is not because he did a magic formula to get us sober. You guys, the thing that changed Josh was going into his story and seeing the truth of what had happened to him and pursuing the Lord, the rebuild and restore parts that we talk about all the time. We don't just say that because it sounds cool. Yeah. It's the solution. Yeah. You have to rebuild your life from the brokenness that has happened. God wants to partner with us in our healing, and that is amazing. I'm so thankful that he does that because he knows we want to participate too. Yeah. He doesn't just do it for us. There's like
well, he can't even do it for us.
Right. Like, we have free will.
He will not force healing upon you. That's just not, because what that does is it removes your ability to choose. And God's not. He's not controlling like that. He's not going to remove your ability to choose something. Yeah. He wants you to have choice, and you have the choice to pursue him, to seek him, to experience healing, or you have the choice to continue to try and provide for yourself what you're looking for. And the reality is that this process of recovery, it's not like, I think even sometimes we make the, I remember early on in my recovery process when I was like doing all the typical things, right? I had all the apps. It was like, I do all the things. I would just it was white knuckling, just counting like how many days I could go without looking at pornography. And that mentality was so damaging because it was all based on my ability to perform. It was all based on my ability to please God with my efforts. And there's nothing that I can do to please him in my efforts. My efforts don't save me. Like, my efforts don't bring me healing. God brings me healing. And it's not that I then was like, well, I just don't have to do anything and God will just love me and heal me. It was like, no, go actually do the stuff that matters. Like, And it wasn't that those things weren't meaningful. It's not that God didn't see the fact that I was trying. I think he honored that and saw that. And I felt that his grace for me in that. But he was like, we got to get to the point where you're actually looking at the reason why you're doing this, or you're going to keep doing it. You're going to keep going back. And so he led us down a road over several years to get to the place where, I mean, thank goodness for the work we have done over the last, I'd say, like 2 to 4 years, especially, and really going back and understanding our stories. And he's still revealing more. Like, he will continue to. We were just talking about someone with us today, but like, he will continue to, as you are ready, continue to reveal more that he wants to heal, because there is always, till the moment we die, there will be healing. We can't
do all the healing.
No, we can't handle it.
Our human brains just can't know the things. We weren't ever meant to know the things of God, but we chose that we wanted to, and that was a mistake.
Yeah.
And that's such a good point, Josh, because I think that, you know, I do want to leave the listeners with some practical things, because I know a lot of our listeners are struggling with this topic.
And it's a topic when we started this podcast that we talked about often. And I think just over time we have delved into other things, but we really have felt the Lord bringing us back into this conversation, not even by our own searching, but just by him bringing things to us, that this is important. I think we used to think we needed to talk about it because it was like, I mean, even early on, we were like, this topic is the problem, like, right? Like sexuality and all,
yes.
and pornography and all that. And while I agree that it's problematic, it's not actually the issue. Behavior is never the issue. And so that's why we are bringing this back into the light, so to speak, because especially as we're raising boys who are getting into closer to their teen years, we have to be having this conversation often, and it has to be something that becomes more normal.
And the conversation's not, why is porn wrong? Why is, you know, I just saw a reel today of someone talking about how their parents sent them off to like same-sex attraction camps or
conversion
whatever.
therapy.
Conversion therapy. There you go. That's what it's called. And you know, the guy was saying it didn't pray the gay away.
Yeah, newsflash, does not work.
It does not work. In fact, putting men who struggle with same-sex attraction in a camp together,
I'm pretty sure
sounds like a recipe for disaster. I'm pretty sure it would just affirm
their feelings.
And little side note, if you are in a coupling where there is same-sex attraction involved, I would stay away from the group of the same sex.
Like groups that are centered around
support groups that are of the same sex.
Well, hold on. That caveat, where the aim is to bring people in who all wrestle with that.
Right.
I think if you are a man or a woman who's wrestling with same-sex desires, but you know in your spirit that God is that is not God's best for you, because that's, you know, we share this often. Like, we do believe that God created sexuality for a man and a woman in the covenant of marriage to enjoy. But we all experience various divergences of those desires. But to put, like, if you're a man or woman, you need other men and women in your life.
Yes.
But
I'm not saying that.
But I know. I was just saying, because it could sound like, don't be in a group with other men if you're attracted to other men, which is not the case. But you shouldn't be in a group with other men who are also attracted to other men. It's a recipe for disaster. We know that from experience. And we could talk about that another time, but we know that.
Yeah. So the struggle with sexuality is running rampant. And I don't think the solution is to say, don't do that to your kids and don't do this. And these people are bad. And that's not true. But I do think a way that we can, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, you know, media that has same-sex attracted notes in it, and just the sexuality of our culture with our teens, there is an opportunity for us to talk about how we were all made in the image of God and how sin has marred us. And sin mars us in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Some of that's nature, some of that's nurture. I want to be very clear on that. And if you want more information about like the same-sex attraction piece of sexuality, Preston Sprinkle is a great resource. We couldn't recommend him enough. He's got a lot of great books, including like Conversations that you can have, if this is something that's pervasive in your life, anything that he writes has been.
And there's the Center for Christian Sexuality, which is an organization that he oversees, along with a lot of other trusted believers, people who both experience some kind of either same-sex attraction or gender dysphoria, things like that. They have a lot of people involved in that organization.
And sometimes I do find that and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, we're seeing a lot of people who struggle with pornography addictions young, where that is morphing to the opposite sex isn't enough. And so the same sex comes into play in certain pieces. And so there is progressions that can happen too, where sexuality is just continually distorted.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just an overarching, a greater, I don't want to say problem, but just a greater thing that we're seeing of distortion of what God designed. The whole, I mean, all of history is just creation being distorted from God's perfect design. So,
which is why we're seeing it continually get worse.
Yeah. So when we see these things, it's not to go and shame a group of people, and it's not to isolate them out or to put the magnifying glass on a group of people and be like, people who struggle with sexual sin are the worst, or they have the most problems. It's just to say these people there's been a lot of lack of care for these people's hearts. We have not provided safe spaces for people who have questions about sex and sexuality, for people to be open and honest. I mean, don't get me started even on the ways that leaders in the church can't talk about these things. We have created such a shameful culture, and it is the reason why people are embracing sexuality in the way they are in the world, because there's no shame around it. For people to be, making all this money and doing all these things with their bodies, it's because they found a place where they can do whatever they want and not be shamed about it. And in reality, the church was meant to be a place where you could come in as you are, with the questions you have, the hurts you have, and not be shamed. And we have shamed people historically, and that has created harm to where people maybe don't trust the body of Christ to be caring and loving towards them.
Yeah.
And so, when we're talking about practical ways that I know you wanted to make sure we got to that, but practical ways to engage in this, right? Where do you want to start with that? What tools do you want to make sure we leave people with?
I don't think I have like an extensive list. I think for me, it's seeing beyond the behavior. See beyond the behavior that you don't like to see. Yeah. The fruit that you're seeing that looks rotten, you might be correctly identifying that it is rotten.
Yeah.
But how can we as Christ followers live restored in the way of not being condemning, but instead coming alongside people and giving them space to be able to process through the things that have hurt them, process through the hard that has happened to them.
Yeah.
And that kind of love is the love Jesus showed to the woman at the well.
Yeah.
And I think if we can the woman at the well, for all intents and purposes, is very similar to this OnlyFans girl that we started this conversation with.
Yeah.
Right. She was on her 5th husband. Jesus knew that.
She'd had many
husbands
partners
before. Yeah. And yet God sat with her. Yeah. And I think on both ends of the spectrum of pornography, as Christ followers, we need to be able to, I would say, first sit with ourselves. Like, is there sin in my life that is sexual sin that is not addressed? And if it's not, it's going to, I just did you guys will be able to see the reel next week when I post it, but I filmed myself getting all the crap out of
from underneath the couch,
because we have a dog and he sheds and it's awful. And
we also have 3 boys and they leave stuff on the floor and then it gets pushed under the couch.
And on the outside, it looks clean. You wouldn't know that there's anything under the couch. But when you take all of that crap out from underneath the couch, and we have to do it often because things just get lost down there, right? That's kind of like your life. Yeah. Like, it's important to do clean sweeps of the places that we don't normally see or touch.
And we didn't bring it all out and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe we let this all build up. And we must just be terrible people. That's why there's all this stuff. We're like, oh, we haven't addressed this, and we haven't addressed why is stuff ending up under our couch? Well, stuff is ending up under our couch because we're leaving stuff on the floor and leaving stuff on the couch. Well, why are we doing that? Well, we're doing that because we're just not taking the time to go and put it away. Well, why are we not taking, like, instead of just going to our kids be like, stop leaving stuff on the floor. And then them, guess what? Doing it again. Going, why are we doing that? Why do you think you guys are leaving stuff on the couch? Why are we leaving stuff on the couch or on the floor? And moving backwards. We have to be willing to do that process with people, to go, I hear you saying that you want to stop watching pornography, but you just can't seem to stop. You keep going back to it. So tell me about when you remember this coming into your life. When did you start looking at porn? Tell me about what was going on in your life at that time of your life. Yeah. Tell me about, the last time that you watched porn. Can you remember what you were feeling before you went and watched it? And that can feel really uncomfortable to get that intimate with someone. But when I tell you that when people are actually given space to say the things that they already know are true, with knowing that they're not going to be judged, there is such a burden that comes off of you when you get to experience that, because we were meant to live honestly. We were meant to live.
Well, the Lord says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest."
Right.
I think we just don't. Instead, we go to other things. We don't come to the Lord. We go to pornography because we know it makes us feel good, or we go to our reels on our phone and we just scroll until something makes us laugh.
And so there's a lot of ways in which I think we would see a lot more freedom in this area if, one, as the church, we created more space for people to bring their stories and to stop addressing their behaviors and stop addressing them as their behaviors. This is where I think we offer a lot of great programs in churches. Lots of churches have CR and different things like that. And programs are great. Also, they are not the solution. They are a tool, but the solution is being known. It's community. It's actually being honest and having space to have someone who's willing to walk the long journey with you to understand where this all came from. And so if we can approach it with more of a heart like that, I think that people are actually going to start to get free, and they're going to experience what safety feels like and experience intimacy with the Lord in new ways. Because God can't do anything with a dishonest heart. Like, if we're just not if we can't talk about our things, there's very little that the Lord can do with that, because he needs our honesty, and we need our honesty. So
that's so true. I know we have to go.
I know we don't want to talk about this a lot more. We will do another part on this. We'll do a part 2 on this because the conversation warrants it. But just, I want to close with this. If you're someone who is wrestling with sexual sin, I just want you to know you're not a horrible person. You are not some kind of monster. You are not just weak. Actually, we're all weak. So in that, you're right.
You are weak, but
you are weak, but it's not your identity. Your identity is not your sin. You are made in the image of God. And if you have chosen to follow him, then you are a child of God. And that matters.
Child of God, those of you on video. That's why you need to be on video.
Exactly. And that matters. And God loves you deeply. Yeah. And he does not see you for your sin. He sees you as his child who's hurting. And we just want you to know that there is hope for your story, and that God does desire healing and redemption for you, and that the journey is hard and it is worth it. And he is patient and he will walk it with you. But you do got to take a step. You got to take a step into it, and you got to start to see some of these things for what they are. So we'll be back again with another part, but
we will. For now, we hope you go out today and you live restored.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Head so heavy on the pillowcase, eyes staring out the window pane. The harder that I